It's Wednesday, March 15. In the headlines, police officers reject government's wage offer. March 15 is World Consumer Rights Day. In business news, income taxes are due today. Regionally, in Barbados, public servants to receive a $1,500 payment. And in sports, 0-0 result after Reggae Boys face off against Trinidad and Tobago. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Police Officers Association has rejected the latest wage offer from the Ministry of Finance. PBCJ understands that members of the group met on Tuesday to review the offer. Chairman of the Police Officers Association, Senior Superintendent Wayne Cameron, says the officers believe some members would be at a disadvantage if they accept the terms of the offer. The specific reasons for the POA's rejection of the wage offer is not clear. However, during his opening speech for this year's budget debate, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, had said that the space does not exist for the government to pay both the first-year restructured salaries and the second-year restructured salaries at the same time. He further explained that for fiscal sustainability, his ministry will have no choice but to pay these amounts over several years, commencing in the financial year 2024-2025. According to the finance minister, his team has allocated over $10 billion for rank and file police officers.
Madam Speaker, we have allocated $10.2 billion. We have it on hand for rank and file police officers. $10.2 billion. That is how much, on top of what they have received already for this year, that is how much is in the budget, Madam Speaker, for them to receive in March if, Madam Speaker, we can come to some agreement or arrangement. Madam Speaker, there's an additional $1 billion for district constables and $600 million for members of the Police Officers Association. That's $11.8 billion that is ready to go.
Opposition leader Mark Golding says the People's National Party, PNP, is seeking a declaration from the Constitutional Court about the continued use of states of public emergency by the government to fight crime. He made the announcement while delivering his contribution to the national budget debate on Tuesday.
Late December, a month in which the government twice declared states of emergency without coming to Parliament for approval, I advised the public that this was such a significant matter to the future of the country, we'll be seeking the guidance of the court on it. Well, in the public interest, an action has now been filed in the Constitutional Court, seeking a declaration that the manner in which this government has repeatedly used the states of emergency since 2017 violates the Charter of Rights and is unconstitutional.
His announcement of the PNP's court action follows the government's declaration Tuesday morning of states of public emergency in Clarendon and St. James. Chief Executive Officer of the Consumer Affairs Commission, Dulcie Allen, says the CAC is taking a different approach towards sensitization for World Consumer Rights Day. The CEO shared some crucial consumer information on the JIS Think Tank series recently. Maya Chung has more.
This World Consumer Rights Day, Mrs. Allen said the CAC is looking at tips and actions from the organization that fit in with the Jamaican consumers' context.
Now we're here again another time of the year where we talk about World Consumer Rights Day. Now, as we all know, March 15 is World Consumer Rights Day. And this is the time where we join with over 120 different countries with 250 members globally to celebrate this significant milestone. This is a time where we look at consumer and focus on the needs of the consumer that we are going through at this particular time. Now, the world has decided, through the Consumers International, that the theme for this year would be looking at energy, empowering consumers through clean transitions. No, we think this is extremely important for us as consumers because we all need to live in a sustainable environment. And energy, as we know, is integral to our existence.
Mrs. Allen advised that budgets are essential.
We're looking at the theme, level up, manage your money. We know that the National Consumers League will go through with the theme from Consumers International. They are full members. And so they'll be looking at the whole thing of energy and clean energy transition. But at the government level, the Consumer Affairs Commission will be looking at managing our finances, managing our money, as I said before, under the theme, level up, manage your money. Have you ever wondered, really, how some people are able to do so well and they earn much less than you? It all goes back to how they manage their resources. And it is a culture that we want to create among consumers. We want consumers to be very well informed as it relates to financial issues. We want you to take your finances in charge. We want to not just to protect you, but we also want to empower you as consumers so you can manage yourself well from very early in the day. You know, many of us, when we're near retirement, we wonder, where did all the years go?
Mrs. Allen said, as consumers, Jamaicans should try to work within the financial paradigm they exist in.
I don't have any money put up for my retirement. It all goes back to how we manage our money. And you may say, but I've earned so little. How can I save? How can I have funds? How can I invest to ensure that I have enough to keep me up to the time of my retirement or after my retirement? Again, it goes back to how we manage the little that we have. It goes back to how wise we are in terms of our decision making as it relates to our finances. So for this year, the Consumer Affairs Commission will be looking at some very basic things about money. The areas we're going to be looking at would include straight back to basics, making a budget. You know, that word budget doesn't resonate well with many people because they keep saying, I just can't. But a budget is really a very simple plan. It records all that your income is, yes, and all that you have spent. And you know, when we start writing down these things, these very basic things, it's amazing how more conscious we are in terms of our spending pattern.
The CEO also advised that guardians should include the children in the budget-making process.
Include the children in the budget process, in the planning, so that they can know exactly what the financial situation is. So the demands can be very different. You know, some children have some strange demands and some great demands as it relates to the parents, and they want everything, and they want all the brand names, and they want to do all these things, go all these places and do all these things. But when they are part of the process and they own the process, they will understand that mommy and daddy or whoever their guardian is really don't have that amount of money to spend. So they'll be more conscious.
She also advocates that professionals tasked with collecting bad debt on behalf of companies and/or individuals conduct themselves in a legal and proper manner.
We encourage again that persons act professionally as debt collectors. Sometimes the way in which they respond to persons, they treat you as if sometimes like you are such criminals, you know. And they come and they do things that are illegal. They take and disrespectful. Yeah, they will take, if you would have pledged 2 pieces of furniture, they come and take everything out of your house, you know, because you are delinquent in your payment. And so we ask that persons, you know, we need a relationship again. And there is a process that you need to go through when you are assigning a debt collector. I'm speaking now to the financial institutions. If a person is late in one payment, you cannot just send to repossess. This is really, you need to give notice. You need to give adequate notice.
For the news on PBCJ, I am Maya Chung.
Students of Little Bay Primary and Infant Schools in Westmoreland will soon be off to numerous adventures when they finally sit in their new school bus. Japan's ambassador to Jamaica, Yoshiro Atsumi, in the company of Minister of Education and Youth, Favour Williams, recently handed over a symbolic check to fund the new school bus.
The Little Bay Primary and Infant School is a small school located in a remote fishing village in western Westmoreland. It's situated approximately 15 miles from the major resort town of Negril. It's more than 80 miles away from the nation's capital. Imagine the number of tours, performances, and competitions they can participate in with the use of a new school bus.
This partnership between the Ministry of Education and Youth and the Embassy of Japan has been an enduring one. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Please take back our gratitude to the people of Japan. The National Education Trust, in its efforts to identify and organize support for schools in need, selected Little Bay Primary and Old Harbor High because of a demonstrated need for transportation services for students.
This partnership yielded success, whereas funding totaled approximately US $1 million, or Jamaican $150 million, has been spent advancing the education sector in Jamaica. Little Bay Primary's principal Karen King says that he intends to have discussions with the Ministry of Education and Youth and other stakeholders to create a budget and work out an arrangement to purchase fuel and finance the bus service, as he does not want to introduce a cost to the students and their parents. Minister Williams confirmed the government's support in that area for other schools.
As it is with a number of rural schools, students must travel long distances without the requisite public transportation infrastructure to support them. The government's rural school bus program continues, but we know that it does not meet the full demand. Annually, we spend about $350 million in transportation support for rural transportation, but I know we do not reach everyone in need.
In addition to Old Harbor High and Little Bay Primary and infant schools, other schools that have benefited include Aracabessa Primary, Buff Bay Primary, New Forest Infant Primary and High School, License Primary, Richmond Park Primary, and Lacovia High. For the news on PBC Jamaica, I am Carla Thomas Hewitt.
The Westmoreland Municipal Corporation has committed to accepting social cases from the Savannah Lamar Public General Hospital at the parish's infirmary. Maya Chung reports.
Social cases refer to patients who have been released but remain in hospital because they have nowhere else to go, as their families have abandoned them. There are currently 21 social cases at the hospital. Mayor of Sav-la-Mar and chairman of the corporation, Councillor Bertel Moore, said the health facility continues to be overwhelmed with an influx of social patients that are taking up well-needed hospital beds. He was speaking at a commissioning ceremony for a new boiler system and a room for the Type B facility. The mayor noted that the infirmary will commence the take-in as soon as the new male ward at the facility is officially opened. Councillor Moore said the municipal corporation has completed a male ward with a capacity of 50 patients. At present, there are 37 patients and there are still several who need to be in the infirmary. Councillor Moore informed that there is space at the facility to hold more than 50 patients. Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Christopher Tufton, in a welcoming move, said his ministry will provide the necessary support to the municipal corporation to facilitate the transition of these social patients. Dr. Tufton indicated that social cases continue to have an adverse impact on the country's hospital bed count, and the ministry continues to explore practical ways to remedy the situation. For the news on PBCJ, I am Maya Chung.
And it's now time for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Tax Administration Jamaica is reminding all categories of income tax filers that today, March 15, is tax day and that they can file their annual income tax returns for 2022 and estimated tax return for 2023 online via the TAJ's tax portal at www.jamaicatax.gov.jm by the end of the day as required by law. For persons needing assistance, the Tax Authority's Special Taxpayer Assistance Program STAP is still accessible online. Business persons are being urged to file their returns on time to avoid the $5,000 monthly penalty for returns filed after the due date. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, March 14, the US dollar sold for an average of $152.95. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $111.37. The pound sterling traded for $185.40, and the euro sold for an average of $163.50. In GSE trading, the GSE index declined by 876 points. The junior market index declined by 20 points. The combined market index declined by 1,004 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 1,004 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 124 stocks, of which 43 advanced, 50 declined, and 31 traded firm. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Berger Paints Jamaica Limited, and Blue Pearl Group Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited Verba Preference, Access Financial Services Limited, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited. Trading firm were Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited, Community and Workers of Jamaica CCU Deferred Share, and Equity Line Mortgage Investment Corporation Preference Shares. The overall volume leaders were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with over 3 million units, JMMB Group Limited 7.50%, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited Ordinary Shares with over 1 million units. In regional stocks in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund was the only active security posting a volume of 20 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Epley Caribbean Property Fund Value Fund was the volume leader with over 10,000 shares. They were followed by Goddard Enterprises Limited, which traded 28 shares. In regional business, business minds came together in the Bahamas for a one-day economic outlook, speaking on topics which range from finding out the new normal to the future of finance. Our news Marlena Leonard reports.
The one-day RF Bahamas Economic Outlook Conference was held under the theme Evolving Risks, the Way Forward. And in his welcome remarks, President and CEO of the RF Group, Michael Anderson, spoke to things like the impact of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the historic levels of inflation, and the rise of China as an economic powerhouse. He says in the face of these challenges, events like the one held today have their strengths.
By bringing together international and local leaders to effect change in policy and strategic planning, we can inspire and drive the necessary changes to protect our economies and take advantage of the emerging opportunities brought about by rapid change.
Economic Affairs Minister Michael Halkitis, a featured speaker, explains how the Bahamas' experience of the global economic situation is compounded by what he calls our experience of twin crises, and that we were hit with the pandemic only months after the devastation of Hurricane Dorian.
To use a biblical term, the challenges are indeed legion. And how do we mitigate these challenges? How do we create adaptable economies in a mutable world? And how do we foster resilience and cultivate an economic culture that can survive and thrive in the face of rapid change and instability? The theme of this year's conference, Evolving Risks, the Way Forward, speaks directly to these pressing concerns.
The event featured talks on the new normal of the economy, the future of finance, and growth opportunities, as well as a panel discussion on global minimum tax and what it means for the Bahamas' financial services industry. Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
In international business, U.S. stocks rebounded as largely on-target inflation data and easing jitters over contagion in the banking sector cooled expectations regarding the sizing of the rate hike at the Federal Reserve's policy meeting.
Wall Street's main indexes staged a respectable rebound on Tuesday as fears of a widespread banking crisis diminished and inflation data showed prices slightly easing. The Dow gained 1%, the S&P 500 jumped 1.7%, and the Nasdaq soared more than 2%. After the implosion of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank, contagion fears were allayed Tuesday as reassurances by U.S. President Joe Biden and other global policymakers vowed the crisis would be contained. Financial stocks clawed back some losses, with the S&P 500 Banks Index coming back from its steepest one-day sell-off Monday since June of 2020. And the Labor Department's monthly inflation report on Tuesday showed prices continued to rise in February, but that the pace of those increases slowed moderately from the month before. Even so, inflation has a long way to go before approaching the Federal Reserve's average annual 2% target. Dryden Pence, Chief Investment Officer of Pence Capital Management, says that puts the Fed in a tough spot as it decides how much to raise rates ahead of its two-day policy meeting later this month.
I think they probably would have liked to have continued to move and maybe gone 50 basis points this time, maybe have to back out of that because of the scare around Silicon Valley Bank. And so now they're in this situation of really trying to figure out how long are the real lag effects. So the Fed's got a very difficult decision to make here is, do we keep raising, do we keep pushing until something breaks? Or do we try to modulate this a little bit and let the consumer catch up with the Federal Reserve? I mean, nobody told the consumer, don't fight the Fed. And the consumer's still out there spending, and as long as they're spending, we're still going to have inflation.
Among the day's individual movers, shares of Facebook parent Meta Platforms rose 7.3% after the tech giant announced 10,000 job cuts in its second round of layoffs. And ride-hailing app rivals Uber and Lyft rose 5% and 0.6% respectively after a California state court revived a ballot measure allowing the companies to treat drivers as independent contractors rather than employees.
In market data for oil extended losses with Brent crude hitting a 3-month low, offsetting hopes of a Chinese oil demand recovery. Brent crude fell $1.87 to $75.58 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude was down $1.64 at $69.69. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Denita Rodney.
In regional news, out of St. Kitts and Nevis, Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, Timothy Antoine, says one of the important requirements for achieving positive growth and development within the OECS sub-region is a need for effective digital transformation of economies, and it needs a change in mindset for it to work.
Speaking with members of the news media on St. Kitts and Nevis, the governor emphasized that digital transformation can work for every sector of the economy and empowers businesses to be profitable, efficient, and even global in outlook.
So I'll give an example. A fisherman whose job is to go there and catch fish to feed us, help feed us, protein or nutrition, should be able to use his or her smartphone to be able to sell his catch before he lands. Catches the fish, uploads it on the phone, poundage type of fish. So I just got 50 pounds of snapper, I have X pounds of tuna. Puts it on a phone, that gets to, by the time he lands in Deer Bay or wherever it is he lands in this country, that is sold. And his job now is to go and get the boat ready for the next thing, because that money is already going into his account. Somebody takes the fish, the funds go through a payment system, he's not standing up in Hudson selling anything. Digital technology allows him to do that. That is how a fisher can be enabled. So I think it's important to have this conversation, because sometimes I think, especially with maybe older folks or more senior folks, they sometimes see it as a clash where we have to shift from something to something. And in this case, we're not shifting from food, we're doing food smarter, as an example. In this digital transformation era, we have to be not mere consumers, but producers. It's very important, very important. The digital economy is here, it is now, it's the future, but we have to be producers in this digital economy. The easiest thing for any one of us to do nowadays is to go on Amazon and click and buy. That's consumption. What are we selling on Amazon or on whatever platforms are available to us?
To achieve success, he said, the combination of skills, digital payment platforms, along with the products and services are required. The governor believes it is an area where OECS governments could lead by example. Then back reporting for SK Newsline.
While speaking during her presentation of Barbados' 2023 budget, Prime Minister Mia Mottley announced that public servants aren't the only ones receiving the $1,500 payment promised by government as part of its agreement with the trade union movement.
That $1,500 ain't only going to the people who work in the public service, but there were people who came in as ash workers at the Ministry of Public Works and at the People National Housing Corporation and in all those jobs during COVID. And the $1,500 represents our thank you. I wish I could do more. I feel you feel it, just like me. I wish I could do more. But I know that I'm doing right, both with the prepayment of this debt and using the surplus that we have beyond our targets this year to do one, reduce our debt, two, to be able to boost industrial productivity by showing our workers that we care about them.
Antiguans and Barbudans now have visa-free access to the Republic of Serbia. More from ABS News.
It follows the recent signing of an agreement in Washington, D.C. between Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador, Sir Ronald Sanders, and Serbia's ambassador, Marko Đurić. Now, Sir Ronald says citizens of this country now have visa-free access to more than 162 nations, making the Antigua-Barbuda passport one of the strongest in the world. He also says, quote, both tourism to and investment in Antigua and Barbuda are enhanced by making access for visits easier for up to 90 days a year without a visa, end quote. A media release quotes Ambassador Đurić as indicating the agreement is, quote, another step in further strengthening the friendship and cooperation between Serbia and Antigua and Barbuda, end quote. Both ambassadors also agreed to meet regularly to explore deeper economic cooperation between the two states in the interests of their peoples.
In sports, we're on the field with football. The match between the Reggae Boys and Trinidad and Tobago on Tuesday ended 0-0. Reggae Boys head coach Hamir Hallgrimsson continued to shuffle the deck at the National Stadium as he made 7 changes to the squad, which went down 1-0 to the Trinidadians at the Montego Bay Sports Complex on Saturday. 17-year-old forward Dejan Richards, who recently signed a pre-contract agreement with English Premier League giants Chelsea, was part of the starters for the night. However, despite several changes, Hallgrimsson and his team failed to bring in a victory. The boys now turn their attention to their CONCACAF Nations League match away in Mexico on March 26. And that's the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Pleasant viewing.